to the agenda posted for the special meeting. You might have noticed that there was no public comments part of the agenda, with the thought that we probably have one or two tasks here that we just want the Board of Finance members to get through as we conclude our business relative to the agenda of the special meeting. We'll adjourn and then reconvene for our regular meeting, which hopefully will be about 7 o'clock. So we'll see how things flow. So everybody understands the rule of the game. Present tonight is myself, Dan Spring, the chair, Carolyn Howell, Paul Simon, Ann Aiken, Dan Smith, and Mike Anderson. Thank you all for being with us tonight. I apologize for the cancellation of last week's meeting. I had a medical issue that weekend going into the meeting, but didn't resolve itself until during the week. And that, as I spoke to Christine on Monday, we still had not had resolution relative to the attorney's rendering on the motion. So we'll leave that. We'll talk about more of those issues as we get to the next meeting. So the second agenda item is talking about the Board of Finance vacancy with the event of Mustafa Ratib resigning and assuming the responsibilities of treasurer for the town of North Stonington. As we consider this, it's one where, though it's not a mandate, we try to give some consideration to fair and balanced representation between the parties, Republican, Democrat, and perhaps unaffiliated. So we have minority representation. And also that for those who have taken part in the capacity as an alternate and have experience relative to the issues that are current. So I'll just open it up for discussion for the moment. If there's some things that any of the Board of Finance members would like to add relative to filling that vacancy at this point. I also will say that we have had applications, of which there have been 3 that have come forward. Those being Brett Mastriani, Sean Murphy, some have indicated as alternate, Sean Murphy, both as Republicans, and Sarah Nelson. And also for consideration is our alternate, Ann Aiken, a Republican. I think there was a consensus from the board over the last couple of meetings to have the potential of Ann moving up to assume that vacant seat simply because she has been a party to all of the discussions as we have met over this last fiscal year, particularly in light of the budget preparation. So I would bring forward a motion to have Ann Aiken, who currently is an elected Republican alternate to the Board of Finance, become a seated member of the Board of Finance, assuming the vacancy created by Mustafa Ratib.
Second.
Would second that. Oh, a tie for second.
Okay, why don't we do a D&D, Dan and Dan?
Nice.
Any further discussion? I
Just
would
the-
add in discussion that I
Oh.
did speak with Ann relative to, responsibilities, tenure, and so forth. So,
Yeah, I would only
Mike?
add, and I agree with, oh, sorry, was there a hand up?
yeah, Mike Anderson.
Go ahead.
I think, with all due respect to Ann, are you talking right now about seating her for this particular budget season or as a permanent member of the Board of Finance?
She would be assuming the seat of Mustafa Ratib and his tenure, which goes until November of 21.
I don't have any problem allowing her to vote for this particular budget. I think she's been a very active member and knows all the ins and outs of what's going on. But I'm concerned about the future makeup of the board for the next year and a half being so skewed to Republicans when we have almost as many Democrats in this town as we do Republicans. And we have a ton of, it's like 987 Democrats to 1,172 Republicans. We have 1,896 unaffiliated. I just don't think it's, it represents the voting members of this town. I would like to have the applicants that have requested to be put on the board be vetted by this board. And we can move forward with the budget season as is, because like I said, I think Ann deserves to vote on this particular budget. I would like to see these other members be interviewed and vetted.
I think Mike brings up a good point. I mean, I've talked about balance and fairness of the three applicants other than Ann. Among them, there's one Democrat. She's registered as a Democrat. She put unaffiliated on her application. Any other discussion? Paul, I think you were next.
Yeah, please. No, I agree with your thought process, Dan, that Ann should certainly be seated as a full voting member for to the end of Mustafa's term. And Mike, I think we do have three good candidates, three good applicants that came through, and I'm happy to consider them as alternates tonight.
All right. I don't know if they had their hand up or paw. But any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we will move to a vote that, again, the
Sorry.
refresh is the wording essentially is that Ann as alternate would move up to be a seated member of the Board of Finance, truly based on her contribution and participation to this point in time. And that tenure would only be such till November of 21. And that's assuming Mustafa's tenure. So all in favor indicate by saying aye, and I'll poll. It's just hard to do it otherwise. Paul?
Aye.
Mike?
I'm sorry, but it's nay for me.
Carolyn?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I understand Mike's concerns, but I do feel that Ann is fair, so I say yay.
Okay, Dan?
Yay.
And I vote yay. And because Ann is subject to this without a
I
vote.
abstain.
Yeah. So it is 4-1-0, and that motion passed, which means, Ann, you now are a seated member of the Board of Finance. Congratulations. We're happy to have you with us as always, and you've been making fine contributions.
Thank you.
And I think that your posture is one of being rational and equally weighting the issues at hand. Okay, that would take us to agenda item number 3, which then would create a vacancy for the alternate to the Board of Finance. And again, as we have utilized Anne, if we have less than 6 seated members, the alternate can be seated. But otherwise, the alternate does participate in all discussions, but would not have a vote unless seated. So alternates are very important, and in the past have been critical to having things happen, you know, making the quorum or adding to the debate. So I think some thought certainly should be relative to who do we bring on? And I think the issue of fair representation and balance certainly is going to be a main topic here. So having seated Ann, we would have Mike Anderson representing the Democratic Party, and Carolyn Howell is unaffiliated. So we have minority representation, but for Republicans. So again, you know, I remind you that if we have a quorum, and that's all that we have, and they're all Republicans, it means that we are lacking or deficient in minority representation. So business cannot be conducted. So it's important to have that ability to have minority representation. You never know when it's going to happen, but can. In that we have 3 applications, all indicating that they would be happy to be in the alternate position. It's a matter of how do we proceed? You know, I think we would say that we know some of the individuals better than others. And I've had all of the applications forwarded to you. It's hard to do an interview one by one in front of us. You know, we could look to do telephone interviews. So right now I'm just opening up to your ideas relative to the selection process. In that we're in the circumstances of the COVID pandemic and isolation. Dan Smith, I saw your hand up.
Dan, where is the statute that states that if an alternate from a Republican Party and there's already basically we need another Republican to be seated to make a quorum? What statute prevents us from doing that?
There is a state statute. If, for instance, we only have 4 members present and they're all Republicans, we do not have minority representation. So that is part of the state statutes, which I reviewed, and I'm happy to have the town clerk send it out to you.
No, I would like to have that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. I know there is a state statute that says the board must be made up of have minority representation, but I'm not sure if it drills down to that granularity for each and every meeting, but perhaps it does. I've just missed that.
The state statute that I read basically states that us as a Board of Finance cannot have more than 4 of one party. The alternates aren't counted as minority representation because they don't start counting that category until they hit 3.
3 alternates, you mean?
3 alternates, and then you have to have minority representation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall the part about the alternates. You know, the alternates are seated when, you know, we have less than the 6. The alternate is seated for the benefit of debate and discussion and vote. Carolyn Howell.
I'm just curious. I know when we had the election that the Democratic Party didn't have anyone to, you know, that wanted to serve in this capacity. And this is, you know, why I was asked to do this. So in November, aren't they able to put someone forward again as an alternate? Is that possible? I'm just curious.
They could. or they could support an unaffiliated, which they have in the past. Mike Anderson.
Statutes, section 9-167A.
I'm sorry, were you
And
gonna read?
I didn't see anything in there about the alternates that Dan was speaking about. If you can point that out, then
Was there anything there, Mike, about the makeup of individual meetings, or was it just more about the makeup of the board as a whole?
but just that, I think if you have a 6-member board,
Yeah,
4 of them can be of the same party.
okay.
So I think to Dan's point, if you're seating the full board with members, you cannot have more than 4 members.
Well, it feels like a
Conducting
stretch.
business.
I'm
So
not sure if that's exactly what that says, but probably an interpretation thing. I mean, the board itself will be made up of minority representation. If someone can't make a meeting, I'm not sure, well, again, I have to read it, that it says we can't conduct business. I don't know if that's what it says exactly, but I don't know if you're looking at it in front of you, Mike, you're the attorney on the team, maybe you can help us. Not to put you on the spot.
I have not seen anything in here that goes to any changes in a particular meeting. It talks about it wouldn't be construed to repeal, modify, prohibit enactment of a special act or charter which provides for a greater degree of minority representation. That's kind of what our school board does, and perhaps we should have an ordinance on this to make sure we're more equally represented. Other stuff about if someone resigns in the middle of session, you'd still have to have minority representation, which in this case we do. So we haven't violated anything there.
Yeah, all I see is it says 4 polled members constitute a quorum and 3 concurring votes are sufficient to transact business. It doesn't say anything about
no.
party affiliation there.
I think they're talking about the permanent board itself. You can't load it with all Republicans and just have, or with just one Democrat or one minority. It is trying to prevent the board from having, 3-4 years of nothing but Republican or Democrat or whatever rule.
That's the way I would interpret it as well.
Which is what we're trying to avoid, gentlemen and ladies.
Dan, can
Yeah.
I provide clarification? I know I'm not on the board, but I have an email from the town clerk that had gone back and forth with the Ted Bromley from the
Yeah,
state.
I just pulled it up, but go ahead because I'm reading it from my iPhone, which is too small. So
So when she
It's
reached out
Ted.
to him, because we were trying to, so this is Ted Bromley from the state. So this was trying to figure out if there was any party, whether it was filling the vacancy since a Democrat had vacated it, or if it was the alternates. You cannot have more than 4 seated in a particular meeting. So say Carolyn or Mike wasn't at the meeting, you could not seat the alternate in their position because then that would violate minority representation. So they can be the alternate, but they can't be seated in a meeting to fill one of those 2 spots. So if Dan, Paul, or Ann wasn't there, you could seat your alternate. But if Carolyn or Mike was the person missing the meeting, you wouldn't be able to seat that 5th Republican.
yeah, which kind of goes back to what I was saying. I was saying it differently. You can't have all of one party developing decisions on the part of the board, because then it would lack minority representation.
So what constitutes as a quorum? 4?
Yes.
Yes.
So right now, we could only have Dan, Paul, and Ann. We couldn't seat the alternate anyways. In that instance, correct?
Right. So it's
We
in
would have
the
a
event that
hold on,
Mike
hold on,
or
hold on.
Carolyn.
We would have a quorum. So the only time that we would actually have an issue is that time right there. So
No, that's not what the state is saying, that an alternate, so this was a chain of emails like this long. So it says, does that mean that the alternate can sit no matter what party, or that the alternate would be violating minority representation rules? Please explain. It appears that sitting an alternate based on your question would violate minority representation. She
No,
laid out the whole scenario of
Seating it.
who's what?
Seating it with 4 Republicans on the board, which we already have a quorum, we wouldn't need to seat if we have a quorum, we don't need to seat the alternate. We don't need that 5th person. See what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with that?
Right.
So we wouldn't seat the alternate. But on the day that I'm not there and there's 3 other Republicans there and Mike's there, they could seat the alternate because the Republican would take my spot.
I think relative to the issue, we should send the statute to each of the Board of Finance members so everyone has clarity as to what the statute says.
Yep, we can do that.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. So if it was only the 4 of us that are seated now, Mike and Caroline were absent, is that to say that we couldn't conduct business in our present form? Even without the alternate question?
Don't need it.
The way I read the statute is that to conduct business, in other words, have a motion that passes,
Mhm.
you have to have a minimum minority representation.
Yeah, I guess I would like to peruse that myself.
So
Sounds
what
like
you're
a-
telling me, Dan, is that alternate, your Republican alternate comes in, and me and Caroline aren't there. He or she comes into the meeting and is a full sitting member, but is not allowed to vote because you 4 get to vote. That's what you're saying.
Because we're full members.
No,
Well,
what
that
I'm
person that
saying,
got seated is a full member for that particular night.
I don't think that's what he's saying.
That is
what
what
I'm
he's saying.
Hang on.
What I'm saying is to have a quorum that is effective relative to passing a motion, you have to have at least minimum representation. So
Which means-
for Republicans, and if that's all that was available, it's not enough.
So if it was me, Dan, and Ann, we couldn't conduct business even without seating an alternate, is what,
You could have a meeting, you could debate, but if it came to a motion, you don't have minority representation.
somehow it must say that in that statute.
Carolyn Howell?
Again, I'm just asking the question, maybe Christine can answer it since no one else seems to have the answer, about in November when we have the election, are the Democrats able to put forward an alternate at that time? That way it would satisfy both. I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
So the alternates, Dan Smith was correct. The alternates aren't subject to the minority representation. So that's why you have 2 Republican alternates right now. So if I don't know when Ann's term as alternate is up. So if that is subject to election in 2021, yes, they could be.
Yeah, if you remember, we had a change in the ordinance that we were trying to cycle the alternates at the same time. So Ann, right now, she did as an alternate, have a term until November of 21. At that time, she could choose to run or, as a Republican, if she was still there, or a Democrat could be endorsed to run for that position as well. Then in 21, they pick up a 4-year term.
But I'm just referring to actually this November. Like, so regardless of filling Ann's position on the board as an alternate, in November, when we vote again, are the Democrats able to put forward an alternate at that time?
2021.
2021, it wouldn't be vacant if the board decides to, well, I mean, the board will decide to fill the vacancy because that's appropriate per statute, then there isn't a vacancy in November. So
Well,
it's not until the term up in 21.
But there's currently a vacancy for the Democratic Party, right? Because we have 2 alternates. No?
No,
There's
there's no
alternate-
minority representation rule for the alternates.
Oh, okay, all right.
I guess the question Caroline is having is Chris Hunt's term as an alternate, is it up this year or is it up next year?
They're both 21.
I think they're all the odd years, right?
Also know that because we have, a 6-member board, we're not in dire straits to have an alternate seated, at least on the near term, even though it would be ideal on the next meeting, but even though it would be ideal. So, but I think, everybody should have a clarity as to the statute.
So
Yeah.
I have a question. So when did we decide to get an opinion on this statute from the lawyer? Was it right after Mustafa left?
No, I mean, statutes are statutes. I
I
mean,
understand that, but we were talking, I think it was Christina was talking about, we got something from the lawyers.
7 o'clock.
Yes, it was when we anticipated the vacancy. I asked the town clerk to reach out so that we would make sure we wanted to make sure you had all the restrictions and parameters before you started to move forward with that.
So why wasn't this information given to us over the past couple of weeks as a board? We put the applications out.
I don't have an answer for that.
it seems to me that there was statutes that were in the statute was in distribution. It seems
Not
like
just
that's.
distribution,
that's
but
why
if they're having correspondence with legal counsel and they got responses, you would think that you would share it with the rest of the board.
Yeah, I didn't see any legal rendering to the statute. I mean, the statute is the statute.
Yeah.
In my opinion, so.
Well,
Yeah,
statute,
so, go, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying the same thing. So I guess I was prepared tonight to bring this part of our business to a close so we can move on to bigger, better, different things. But if there was a long email chain that Christine has, even though I reviewed the 3 applicants and I think I'd be ready to, to select one today, I'm a bit more uncomfortable, just not knowing.
So this was clarification for the town clerk. It wasn't with the town attorney, it was with the state, and that's why it was internal. I mean, we can share it with you all, but
I mean, if
this
you
was
think it's not
before knowing
relevant,
what was going to happen, so this was just, okay.
yeah, I just say if you don't think it was relevant for us, I mean, I can certainly make a motion here tonight to fill that role. I think any of us can, because I think we've all reviewed the applications. Is that true?
Yes.
Well, the applications have been sent to everyone.
Yeah.
But I also think that, just as a point of functionality relative to the board, it's, do we understand the statute? In the event that we, to conduct business, need minority representation.
I guess I'm still trying to understand if I know that's the board makeup, but is that, you're saying we can't have a quorum with 4 Republicans? Is that what we're
Correct.
trying to say, Dan?
Yeah.
So if it's just the 4 of us?
Well, currently we have an affordable housing board that has, I think, 7 Democrats and only 1 minority representation. So there's multiple boards out there with issues. So,
Yeah, if we're not able to pull up the statute to get clarity on this among the group here, that, we will get the distribution so that you have the statute. I mean, I think it's something that needs to be answered and held to a level of clarity.
I'd like to make a motion to close applicants at this time. We have 3 right now. We've let it go on for what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks now?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'd second that. I think we have a good pool.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to close applicants as of this date, May 20th, for the Board of Finance alternate position. So it was Dan and Paul. Any further discussion? Mike Anderson?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have my earphones aren't working. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yes.
Yes,
I just been in this town long enough to have seen boards that get a little bit one-sided, and I don't think it's a good thing for this town for that to happen. We have a good board here. We have strong minds, strong fiscal minds. We have, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean to categorize anybody. We have 3 particularly conservative Republicans on the board with, and maybe a little bit more moderate Republican, and we have an unaffiliated, we have a Democrat. And 2 of the applicants for this alternate position are on the more conservative side. And I just think we have, leave it open for maybe a more moderate person to come in on the, present an application. I don't see why we got to rush through this process. And, it's just, I want to read a quote that I've found, that I think it's apropos during the times that we're in, and maybe in this particular meeting itself. And I'm not going to have a reference to the quote, so I apologize for whoever wrote this, but he said, widening polarization about political, religious, and scientific issues threatens open societies, leading to entrenchment of beliefs, reduced mutual understanding, and a pervasive negativity surrounding the very idea of consensus. I think the point that Dan made at the beginning of this meeting, and what I've been striving for this time, is that you need a vigorous debate on ideas from many different ideas of thought. And I just warn you guys to not stack the deck in thinking that that's going to be a good thing for this town, because it's not. And I'm not saying that because I think a Democrat should be on the board or unaffiliated. I don't know enough about Sarah. I think, she's put in a good application. But we have to have, different ideas on this to make sure this town goes forward in a way that's positive.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mike. Carolyn?
So I have a question, because you said that Sarah said she's running as Democrat, or she's unaffiliated, but she's actually, what is she registered as? I'm sorry.
The town clerk verified that she was with the registrar of voters, a Democrat.
So, but on the application, it's unaffiliated?
Yes, yep. Yeah, and, you know, to Mike's point too, I mean, the sense of balance, I think is important, and something that we have to all be open to. I also think that we should encourage people who are new to being involved in the town also be considered, you know, relative to, okay, somebody other than somebody who may have been in politics in the town for a decade or two, you know, so. Yes, Carolyn.
So my other question would be, I think it's important to understand the roles that we all play within the town, like all the other committees that we are on and participating and actively representing. So, I mean, I think that needs to be taken into consideration too. So if you have somebody, you know, is there any conflict of interest? I'm just saying, I mean, I'm a member of the fire company, but I'm not representing the fire company here. But I mean, I'm just curious how, because I know that we do need new members, you know, we need a variety of people, but it seems that there's a lot of people who are on multiple, you know, committees and, you know, I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, I think that probably there's probably two sides to that, I think it's, it could be of value to have linkage, you know, that I understand what's going on with Board of Finance and how it's linked to, you know, another commission or board. So there could be some value there. But I also understand that, you know, you don't want prejudices or biases built into decisions that really hurt the totality of what the Board of Finance responsibilities are. Yes, Ann.
I have no problem leaving the application process open. Without clarity on the statute, I don't think we should vote to fill the position tonight.
I agree.
But to what Carolyn said, I think it really is important to know what other committees people are on, because it enriches us, and there is also the possibility of conflict of interest. And in that vein, I don't think I know what everybody on the board is involved with. And so can we go around and speak up and say what other committees we're on? And when we look at the applicants, can we strongly consider what other committees they are on to enrich our board?
I think that's reasonable, certainly. Before we get to that, though, I mean, we do have a motion on the board, on the floor. And that, is there more discussion relative to that? And the motion in its simplicity is talking about the merit of keeping the application period open for another week or two till we come to a decision point, or that we should close it as of this meeting. Mike Anderson was up first, Dan.
Actually, I had my hand up before he did, but that's fine.
Oh, I thought you were resting your head, so I apologize.
And go right ahead.
He yields to you, Dan.
How can we as a board need to be able to vet a certain amount? We cannot have a moving target where if we want to vet these guys out, we need to have a certain amount of candidates to vet out. We cannot have all of a sudden 4 or 5 more candidates and then we just keep on having this moving target. We need to narrow this down. If this board wants to go and vet everybody out to find out what board and what they're going to bring to the table, fine. Let's seal it right now. We got 3 great candidates. Let's vet them out. We got 1 from a Democratic Party. We got 2 from the Republican Party. Let's vet them out. We've had 2 weeks. People have had 2 weeks. Let's get going on this.
All right, Paul, you had your hand up.
I think we jumped Mike.
Mike, oh, okay, Mike, you yielded. I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
Please.
just keep in mind that if we fill this vacancy with another Republican I mean, Carolyn and I are out, there's a good chance that this board is not going to be able to conduct its business. So you may want to think about trying to get more people to encourage more people to apply and give us more choices. If you're, other than that, I think really there's only one logical choice,
Okay.
and that would be staff.
We're back to the motion, whether or not to close the time period for applicants. Are we ready to take a vote?
I was just going to add one more thing, Dan, if I may. It's just, I agree that the process is, it's a couple weeks is a pretty good time for any job posting. Certainly it's what we do at work. It's been out there. Mike has mentioned it and out in the public. I think if there was interest, we'd have it. I'm comfortable with it being closed and us to review these 3 applicants, like Ann was suggesting, at a future date. But I'm ready to close it.
All right, the only relative in response, what I would just say, the 3rd applicant just came in today, so 2 weeks had elapsed and the 3rd one just came in today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And the second of 3 came in just this week as well.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take this to a vote. And again, it's whether or not we close the period for accepting applications as of today's date. So, and I'll just poll all that might be in favor. Paul?
Close it,
You're a yay? You're a yes, Paul?
Yes.
Okay. Mike Anderson?
No,
Carolyn Howell?
Yeah, I think that we should close it.
Ann Aiken?
Nay.
Okay. Dan Smith? Okay, you're muted, but it looked like you said yes, you're yay. Yeah. And my vote would be nay. So it's 3-3-0. The motion does not pass. All right. It looks as if in this particular issue we table to our next meeting, in that we want to bring clarity relative to the statute, so everybody understands it and what the implications are relative to minority representation. All right. With that being said, I would like to move for adjournment.
moved.
Second.
Was that you, Mike, or Paul?
I said I moved,
Okay.
Paul second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's 6-0-0, and our time is 7:16.
Might there be a slight pause between meetings, Dan?
I have no problem with that. 5 minutes enough for
Plenty.
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Thank you.
5-minute pause, and we'll be back in, I guess, 7:21 or 2, whatever it's going to be. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, Anne.
Yeah,
Antoinette let me know today that if you had gotten seated, that you need to go into the town hall to get sworn in as the new position.
okay,
So she's there every day, 8 to 4. You just need to call and let her know when you're going to come. So,
okay, all right, good.
um, yeah. Yeah. It's like my brain went somewhere else, but I'm back. So.
I have to do it
I'm
in
here.
person.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I actually have to do it in person, I assume.
Yeah, you actually have to physically be in person. So you have to
Okay.
sign the book and do that.
Okay, all right,
Wear your mask.
yes.
Yes.
All right, it's 7:22. Let's see if we can reconvene. I'm going to call the regular Board of Finance meeting for the town of North Stonington dated May 20th, 2020 to order, with the time being 7:22. And again, present is myself, Dan Spring, Chair, Carolyn Howell, Paul Simon, Mike Anderson, Dan Smith, and Ann Aiken. I think I've got everybody up except Mike Anderson. Why don't we just give Mike just a minute to reconvene?
Is Dan Smith up? I don't see him.
He was just a minute ago. I don't see him visually, but he was there just a
I'm
minute
here.
ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay,
there he is.
Mike Anderson, are you back with us? All right, I'm sure he'll join us. We've got 5 members here. So we would move to our next agenda item, which is public comments. And Christine Diaz, if you could help me out with this.
Okay, so if anybody has a comment, you need to unmute yourself. That's *6 if you're on the phone. And if you are on your computer, if you can just unmute yourself and make sure you say something so we know that you have unmuted yourself.
I am unmuting myself.
Ryan.
Hi. I just hope everybody got my letter. You know, I know you guys, it's a tough job what you're doing, but I wanted to write my letter because, you know, my granddaughter said it took me 10 minutes to say. But the last part of it, I think is most important. I keep hearing the phrase, move the town forward. We are going forward, but the taxpayers' finances may not be. So I can't stress that enough. And I just wanted to say that. You know, Dan, all of you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, Brian, relative to that, I mean, what we try to do is maintain the functionality and the efficiency of the town, meeting expectations with services to our residents, and yet also have an eye to the future, you know, knowing that 10 years goes by quickly. So what's the town going to look like in 10 years or even 20 years? And that we have to keep that in mind. So sometimes we get trapped in our thinking relative to the snapshot of the day. So it's a balancing act and sometimes blended with compromise. So thank you for your input. Next.
I love it.
Any other public comments?
I'm not
Okay.
seeing any.
All right. Hearing none, we'll go on to agenda item number 3, which I left a little broad because there's just a number of things in there that we left from our last meeting. And so we're talking about budget review and preparation. Also with a thought, can we move this forward submission, budget forward, submitting it back to the Board of Selectmen? One of the issues of our last meeting was a motion brought forward by Dan Smith relative to the use of the unassigned. And again, if you recall, we have a motion that did pass that this board is willing to utilize the unassigned up to 225,000 and an odd amount that would satisfy the shortfall in revenue as we look at this next fiscal year. So I think everyone got the rendering from the attorney. Am I correct in saying that?
No,
And Aiken did not. Mike Anderson did not. Paul did, Dan did, I did. Carolyn, you got it?
I did, but I had to search for it. I think there's a problem with the Board of Finance group messages. They're not going out. I asked the IT guy he had to re-invite me, but I'm still not getting them forwarded. I just have to actually log in and go like seek out information still. So communication is a real problem.
All right, Christine Diaz. Do you have that rendering at your fingertips?
I do, just give me 1 second to pull it up.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, Dan, I can give a Reader's Digest of what that was because I read it in detail. Basically, it's saying that we cannot go above and beyond what the state statute states. We cannot make our voting requirements more stringent than what the state statutes are, which is basically simple majority.
Well said.
That's what I got out of it too.
Yeah, we can't go sick. We can't make it unanimous like Mike was talking about.
Sure. Yeah, so that's it. But that the Board of Finance has total authority as to the use of the unassigned.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so relative to that motion being a part of any of our,
I would
thinking
withdraw
or
the
just-
motion.
yeah, so it has no meaning relative to where we move things now.
I just think I just want to just say as a board, pretty much collectively, we made the commitment to put the money back.
Right,
Everybody stated that on record that we wanted to put the money back just next year. We just need to remember that.
okay. And again, things that happen relative to credits, surpluses, all that fall in those categories and beyond, de facto go to the unassigned. All right. The other issue that left hanging from our last meeting was we had a tabled motion. And the tabled motion was relative to the Board of Education budget brought forward. We had debated, if you recall, just to give a little history, back and forth between the 2.1% increase versus the 2.85. And in that debate, the Board of Ed went back and did some work and came forward with what would be a 2.5% increase. And the motion was to approve the Board of Ed budget at a 2.5% increase as presented and approved by their board. So it did not go to a vote. I think we've had a lot of discussion. Most of the discussion centered on them being able to maintain the quality of program, curriculum execution that we have known up to this point in time with great outcomes, and also giving them a very strong platform still to move forward the School of Choice initiative that has the potential to be a revenue source for the town. And that I think there's acknowledgement that Board of Ed has moved that forward, has had very substantive discussions with other districts about sending students to the town of North Stonington. So we've got the motion and the second. We can add more discussion here. Yes, Dan Smith.
I would like to have an update from Christine Wagner on what the school of choice status is right now. Has there been a change in status? Is it still, we're up to 5 or 6 schools, or?
Well, 5 or 6 schools wasn't on the table, but we have been in conversation always, as stated, with 2 other districts right now. Preston moved at their meeting last Monday to move forward with North Stonington and with Griswold as an option, working through contract, which is what we are doing right now. And Voluntown as well is looking at the contract, and we're working on that to see how that would flush out as well. So both districts are looking to move forward. We don't know the time frame with Voluntown at this point, and with Preston, they're just, we're going the next steps now. They're looking at both, they've approved both Griswold and North Stonington. And then now they're looking at contracts and how we work out the language so that it works out. And our attorneys are working together with that.
So is it, really good feeling, somewhat good feeling, or,
Well, they approved us on Monday. So that to me is an excellent feeling. We just need to finalize contracts and everything else.
So to me, that's a big step forward, at least with one district, correct, Christine?
Yep.
One district.
Yeah, and Voluntown has a contract in hand as well.
Okay. Any other further discussion? I know we've had a lot of it up to this point in time.
Oh, actually, would it start next year, or is there like a year lag time period, or?
That's going to be up to them how they want to move forward. With Preston, we're hopeful that it would start next year. With Voluntown, I have a sense that maybe not until the year after, but we don't know that for sure yet. What happens is a lot of times the schools will have they'll showcase the schools that are options for schools of choices. So we would be on the docket for next year, but then kids would look at us, take a review, walk through the schools, do all of that. And probably at the Voluntown side, I would think not choose us until possibly the next year. But we're not there on that step yet. What we're working on right now is contracts. So I don't want to speak for other boards of education on time frame. I can tell you what my gut is, but I hate to pre-speak on things until we have a contract. But contract negotiations are in works, and Preston has voted through their Board of Ed last Monday to choose both Griswold and North Stonington as additional schools of choice.
In terms of them considering us, just for the benefit of the board, Christine, they've had tours of our facilities and et cetera. And
yep.
Would it be also a situation where individual students or families from those districts would tour the schools?
They've already done that. We've already done a full open house. They've had students in, they've written letters saying how impressed they were. They've had parents speak at meetings. We've been to at least 3 to 4 Board of Education meetings of theirs representing our principals, have given presentations. We're past the let's look and see. We're there.
Yeah.
They've chosen us. Now we need to work out the contract, and they don't seem to have any problem with the contract that we're putting forward, and our attorneys are working together, and so that's where we're at with it.
All right. Another point, and again, just an informational piece to members of the Board of Finance, that recently the principal of the high school got a letter from NEASC with notable commendations as to improvements and advancements that they have seen since the school's last assessment. And I think was very rich with positives, which is, again, one more thing that showcase how well our district is doing.
Yeah, they had no recommendations for us on that, Dan, which is, we've never seen anything like that. We got, a huge seal of approval from NEASC. We are fully accredited. We are off warning. A lot of it has to do with our programming, our facilities, our teacher ratios, all of that. So that was all listed as, reasons why we continue to have such great accommodation, a recommendation and accreditation from NEASC.
Yeah. The flip side to that is also if there were changes in funding and or programming that NEASC wanted to be notified.
Yeah, we'd have to
And-
notify them if we change
Yeah.
any of what we currently offer. So sometimes
they'll-
it's really easy to look at what you have for
Yeah.
teachers and programs and say, just cut that. And everything that we have is NEASC driven.
Right.
So yeah, if we cut any of those certain kinds of things, like they really recommend a math specialist at the high school, for example. They really recommend you have to have media specialists. You can't just cut a media specialist. There's certain positions through NEASC that our administrators are well aware of the ins and outs of that, much more than a layman, somebody like myself that doesn't work in education. But they are on top of that all of the time, and there are certain criteria you have to hit to keep that accreditation.
Right. I think it was a valuable input relative to the discussion at hand, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion relative to the motion?
No, nothing that I can say. That I do appreciate all the good work that Christine and her team has done. We came from a place where probably wasn't affordable to a place where I think now we're in a good spot to keep all the programs, make ourselves attractive to other towns, and I hope palatable to our townsfolk. So nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, can we get a reread of the official motion?
I think it was simplistic in that, we were approving the 2.5% increase of the Board of Ed budget over last year as was amended and approved by their board. And I think they gave a lot of justification as to why they need to be at that level. Yep. All right, so if everyone's okay, why don't we bring that motion to a vote? And again, we'll do it by polling. And Carolyn, you're to that side of my screen. So your vote?
Yay. Yay. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Paul Simon?
Yay.
You're on mute.
Yep, I'm sorry. Yay.
Ann Aiken,
Nay,
that was a nay, Ann?
correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, your head went down when you said, I know you're writing,
Yeah,
so.
sorry.
yeah. Dan Smith,
Yay.
Mike Anderson,
Yes.
and myself, yay. So we pass that motion 5-1-0. Again, reiteration, approving a 2.5% increase to the Board of Ed budget for the fiscal year 2020-21.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate your
Christine.
support.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You.
we're very pleased. The other piece to the budget is the general government budget. And if you recall, some of the amendments that happened there that was recent and approved by them was the deletion of the 108,000 for road repair. A follow-on to that was the potential of an addition of a 1 per diem volunteer fire company, which I would say has not been approved by the Board of Selectmen as it was submitted to us. So that's kind of where we left the discussion last meeting.
So is it appropriate at this point, Dan, to ask for that, a change to our agenda? I'm not sure if we went over it at the beginning of this meeting to add that discussion for that per diem fireman as part of tonight's meeting?
It's not as an agenda item, but it certainly was part of the debate in budget preparation as we discussed it last week.
So may I
And-
make a motion to add that as an agenda item tonight?
You can do that, sure.
And I would like to make that motion to discuss the per diem firefighter for discussion tonight for the Board of Finance.
Is there a second?
I'll
to?
second it.
Okay, so Carolyn seconds that. So what we're doing here is just officially adding the issue of a per diem fireman to go back to the Board of Selectmen. And I think we've had a lot of discussion, but we're at a point where we're open for discussion here on this motion.
So I guess I could start. Mike invited the Board of Finance folks last week to attend his meeting where the committee presented to him. I was public at that point, talking about where they are at this point. It was clear to me early on, even though the presentation was very articulate, that they are in the early throes of this process. So I don't know how much we can do on it now based on what I learned anyway. I'm not sure if someone here on this board or perhaps in the audience that might be able to shed some more light on what direction they might be going. It wasn't even clear to me at that point that they had a clear direction, because again, it is so early in their process.
Okay, so what Paul is saying is that the selectmen did delegate a committee to look into, I guess, the preparedness of the volunteer fire company relative to where it's at now and a comparative to other towns, and whether or not there would be a drop down saying, okay, we're at a point where we should be looking at full-time firemen. Carolyn?
I don't think it's full-time firemen, but I'm just curious. We had discussed extending an invitation to the fire chief or the fire department to speak and answer questions. Did that happen?
Yeah, I think we had to yield to, in that there was a committee already established with the fire chief being a member of that committee, that there was an interim report given to the Board of Selectmen. I know Paul listened in on it. I did as well. I don't know who else did. That was the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday.
Yeah, I listened in on the meeting, but we discussed at our last Board of Finance meeting that we were going to extend an invitation and have them heard so that we could ask questions and they could be heard, regardless of how this moves forward. And I was just asking, did that happen?
As the chair, I did not extend an invitation to the chief, if that was supposed to be the individual representing the issue. I think we did have introduced in our discussion letters. I think there were 2 in particular that were distributed. And perhaps even a third of late by the chief. I know, I'm pretty sure it had full distribution relative to the board.
Then maybe we should wait, maybe we should wait until you extend that invitation like we planned on, so that this could be part of these discussions. I think it's important for at least us. I mean, they're telling us there's a problem. They have a solution to the problem. And I think they would just like to, at least have these discussions publicly so people actually can hear it from those who are living it every day.
Okay, so in this discussion, we have a motion on the table relative to just adding it to the agenda. It sounds as if there's enough discussion here that we should vote to add it to the agenda, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So if we can take that to a vote. And I'll poll. Carolyn, where are you? Yay or nay? That it's being added as an agenda item?
Well, I'd like it to be added to an agenda item, yes.
Okay. Paul Simon,
Yes.
excuse me, Ann Aiken,
Yes,
Dan Smith,
No,
Mike Anderson,
Yay.
and I vote yay. So that's 5-1-0. Okay, so, it's on as an agenda item. I would put it as a bullet under agenda item number 3. Talking about budget preparation.
Thank you.
So Carolyn Howell made a point that, should we have the chief again make a presentation? I think he set his perspective pretty clearly in the letter. To Paul's point, and we listened to the committee, they weren't complete, though they seemed to think they weren't far from having a level of completion. Then it's a matter of, okay, where do we take it from here? Again, Board of Selectmen, I've got to reiterate, did vet the issue and chose not to include it in their budget.
Well, I guess I have real concerns about the chairman not, it's like we're asking things to be added to our discussions and yet this isn't being put forward. So whether someone agrees with it or not, it's still, you're supposed to be representing all of the Board of Finance members here. So everyone, we have people that have wanted to have discussions so that we could move this forward. And yet, it's not being acted upon. And I'm not really sure why, and it makes me uncomfortable, frankly.
Okay, well, one, you're a proponent of the issue, correct?
No.
I'm a proponent of addressing problems that are known and acting on them. So if we have a known problem where they're short on help and they're saying they have a resolution to the problem, then I think it's important for everyone in the public to understand what the problem is and what their solution is, since they are the ones that are providing the solution and they know best. So, you're talking about the chief of our fire department, who is very highly regarded and experienced. And I think it's only fair to at least have his voice heard. And I think that you should extend an invitation and maybe next week we could have him here so that we could hear this. We are not the ones that pushed this discussion off for 2 weeks. So, I think it's unfortunate, but I really think it's important to have these discussions.
All right, relative to that, I have to give consideration to the committee. And the other, when the chief did make his presentation to the Board of Finance in preparing for the budget of this year, that was not mentioned. And I think I was the only Board of Finance member who I would have to say almost aggressively asked him questions about preparedness, staffing, equipment, how that related to our insurances, and just really a wide range of questions. But, I agree. If we need more information, let's get it, so I just feel as if there was an opportunity and for whatever reason, it wasn't picked up then, but now has been reintroduced. So
Because it was.
The chief, I don't know, the chief has the numbers, he has the information, he's doing the job. He's the one that is representing the fire company, he's the professional. He needs to be heard, and he put it in the budget and the selectmen took it out and they said that it was the first time that it had been submitted, and we all know that's not correct. It was over a year ago in February that they actually had presented it before, and it was also taken out. So there's a pattern of the selectmen taking this out of the budget and them not having a voice to be heard. And this is a public safety issue. So, I mean, they really need to address it. And I understand they have a committee put together, but I think you have to recognize the fact that the two people on the committee that are closest to this subject are the chief and Jim Tuttle, who is the head of the ambulance.
Which is assistant.
So, I mean, those people, their voices are critical. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and I'm really having a hard time understanding why this is such a difficult thing to just bring forward and have these discussions about.
I have not, I don't want to present any difficulty. I don't even know how well informed you are relative to the committee and what they're doing, Carolyn. So, you know, and I would like to blend it. Ann Aiken.
What about the option of not putting it in the selectmen's budget and adding it as a separate line on the referendum?
Yeah, we even talked about that. And I think guidance from the first selectman, he was not against that. Mike Urgo, we have the first selectman in the meeting.
For a point of clarity, last time you guys met, you had asked for the committee to come and potentially present to you, the committee, not the chief. So that was never asked. I mean, I was on the meeting and I was going to bring the committee to your next meeting, but then your meeting got canceled. So I sent an email, which you all received, inviting you to our meeting, which Paul and others did attend, where they did come into our meeting and gave an update. So I think that those requests have been listened to. Again, we all recognize it's a concern. You are correct. It was presented last year. In response to that, though later than we would have liked, we appointed a committee to look at this. The committee is working very quickly to look at it. I would not favor, the selectmen did not favor putting this in the budget. That being said, the Board of Finance can put it in the budget if you would like to. I would urge the Board of Finance to move this budget forward as it is, as the Board of Selectmen presented it, to public hearing. And if there is information at the public hearing that directs us to change what we're doing, then so be it. That's the point of the public hearing. But the Board of Selectmen put this budget forth now in its sixth iteration, and it's time to move it forward to public hearing so that folks can let their voices be heard on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Dan Smith, you had your hand up.
So has there been any movement on how this budget is going to be voted on? Is it going to be by referendum, or has the governor changed his mind on any of this? Somebody?
I think Mike Urgo, you probably have the most recent information relative to that.
I have the most recent information. In fact, I was on a call. I have a Wednesday call with the governor and asked that very question, Dan, because I know that there are people that would love for that to happen. And at this time, there's no change to the governor's guidance as far as how this is going to move forward. Again, our job right now is to put this to public hearing, and that's the only thing we need to worry about. You know, things change very rapidly with regards to what is going on here. And so, you know, we have certainly the hearing, which is the first step. So
I understand.
as things come, certainly bring it to you. But right now, the hearing is the next step.
Relative to this agenda item, comments, Carolyn, back to you.
And do you have notes from that meeting where this was brought forward? Because
I do.
sure. Could you read those?
It will take me a couple of minutes to get there.
Mike, I'll get to you as soon as Ann responds.
Mike suggested that we talk to the committee to see what they to see what data they have gathered. Agreed to a joint meeting to listen to what they have to say. Mike Anderson agreed that it was a great idea and that we should listen to the committee next week. And Dan Springs said he could arrange this meeting for next week. That's what I've got.
So the committee would consist of 4 people, not just the secretary, correct?
Were you directing a question to whom, Carolyn?
I guess I'm just clarifying that the committee would consist of 4 people, not just the secretary making a presentation. I would think that all 4 of the committee members would be present and available to ask and answer questions, not just the secretary. I
So-
think it's
So
important.
in general with committees, Carolyn, it's the process by just a simple chain of command process that we try to use with the committees in town, and this is really almost every committee, is that the committee has a chair, and the chair is generally the one who would address answer the questions, address the committee. It doesn't mean that others wouldn't potentially be there, but you wouldn't have an opportunity, generally speaking, unless the committee chair then designates different parts of a presentation, which can happen, you would listen to the chair. In this particular case, at my meeting, the chair was unavailable and designated the secretary to come. So I invited your committee to my meeting in light of your meeting being canceled. So the directive was carried out as best as it could be with your meeting cancellation. The information was presented, and that's what we're doing as a Board of Selectmen. I know you don't like what's happening, but you guys are on the Board of Finance. If you don't like it and you want to add back in money for firemen, you can do that. I'm just warning you that my opinion is, and this was, I believe, the opinion of the Board of Selectmen, because we unanimously moved in this direction, that we wanted to see the committee's work. We wanted to do our due diligence on this. And we realized the fact that once you go down the road of potentially adding staffing or paid staff, per diem staff, however it looks, that's going to be a rising cost for the town. I mean, there's no question about it. So it's not that we disagree with the potential need or disagree with any of that. All we want to do is we want the data. We want a good, solid amount of data to move this decision forward, because I understand there's always heated opinions on both sides of issues, but my experience in town has shown me that if you have good data to back up what you're doing, it much more easily will go through an affirmative voting process. And right now, we need that data from the sources that we're trying to get it from. So that's where we're at.
Well, I think the best source for our town is the head of our EMS that are actively doing this. And I think that to filter information through people that don't do this every day, I just think you're talking about doing a disservice. I really feel strongly that if you're being fair about listening to all the facts, that there should be representation and the chief should be allowed to speak and answer questions.
He's on the committee. He is the representative on the
Yeah, but
committee.
you're telling me that, so the chair wasn't available, so they had the secretary there. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If someone wasn't available, if Dan Spring wasn't available on our board, we're not having, I'm not presenting for the Board of Finance. So, I mean,
If you were asked to, you would.
You canceled the meeting last
week.
Right.
Last week, the meeting was canceled, and we actually could have held a meeting because Paul Simons is our vice chair, and there probably would have been enough people to actually hold the meeting and send, the Board of Education budget through. We were ready to vote that very night when we had to put everything on hold again. It's just been a very long process.
All right, I think, we get your point, Carolyn. Mike, you made your point. Mike Anderson, you've had your hand up for a while, and then I'll come back to you. Mike, you're recognized. Mike Anderson.
Thank you, Dan. I'd just like to remind everybody, when we, 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation about, the Board of Education bringing their budget down significantly, which opened up the potential for maybe doing one per diem fireman. And I thought that, many of us on the board thought that was definitely a good, maybe a good compromise between the interests of the town. So I think that should just be remembered and bear on the discussion right now. But I think the process should be that we rely on the Board of Selectmen and what they have put forth in their budget. They have a committee that's been appointed that can discuss things at the hearing, the public hearing. We can hear from the public as whether or not they want us to include this in the budget, and use that process to determine, do we add in $50,000 to this budget, which I'm not necessarily against. If that's what the townspeople want us to do, and this board votes to put it in, then we can do that. But I think we need to move this budget forward today to a hearing, get this process going. And with all due respect, Carolyn, we heard from the chief, we heard from Joe Casado, we've heard from members of the board where we know what their need is and what the direct need is, and I understand it. People work during the day and they're having a hard time making sure that there's enough emergency services people there to take care of problems during the day. But there may be other factors that this committee is looking into that we have to allow them to do their due diligence. But at the same time, we have to do our job and move this thing forward. And I think we can do that by going to a public hearing. We can then make our decision then as whether or not to add this back in. Or I actually like Ann's idea of having to be a separate question. So we know that, if the townspeople really want it, they'll add it back in.
So is there a motion on the table right now at all?
No, there is not.
Okay, so can I make a motion that we have the fire chief invited to come back and just answer questions and speak to this? He's the one that's asking for the help. He's the one that's stating there's a problem. He has a plan of action that he could put into place. He's asked for the money to fund his plan of action. I think that it's important to discuss this. I mean, I think it's a real issue. I think it's important and it needs to be addressed. I think it just flies in the face of public safety to ignore this. And I'm not saying that it has to be, maybe the people won't support it when we have a chance to finally discuss it and vote. However, it puts the onus on the public. If something bad were to happen, which it will eventually, I'm sure, it's just, they're telling you that they're short and they need help. They're telling you they're tired, they're getting old. And I think it's important for them to be heard.
So what is your motion, Carolyn?
I would like to make a motion to invite the chief to our next meeting, whenever that is, so that we can discuss this and answer, he can answer any questions that we or the public may have regarding this. And that way it's going to the public hearing. We've already had an opportunity to ask questions and have them answered by the person who knows best. And then if they want to have the committee at the public hearing, that's fine. So again, I'm sorry. So I make a motion to invite the chief of the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company to our next meeting so that he can be heard and answer any questions that the public or we might have.
Before I call for the second, I have no problem extending an invitation to the chief if we need more information. I think there are two ways to go after some resolve to this.
Excuse me.
Hang on just a minute. One is to include the per diem firemen in the budget and have it go to a public hearing and let them decide, is more or less what you were suggesting. Or to leave it out and present it as a possibility.
If I am making the motion, I would like to extend it to the chief to come and present his plan and his need so that we can hear it and understand it.
Okay, you have a right to bring the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Only that, again, I'm not sure if I can alter it, but to have the committee come as well.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to hear from all four people that are in the committee, along with the chief and the head of the ambulance. I want to hear from everybody in that committee, not just the chief. It's a collective. It's a collective whole for that whole committee. I want to hear from the whole committee, not just the chief, not from just the EMS guy. I want to hear from everybody.
Yeah, would it be a problem, Carolyn, to alter that motion a bit, to extend it to the whole team, including the chief?
I will change that, except I would like the chief to make the presentation, and the committee is there. They could answer any other questions that people may have.
It's up to the chair of the
But
committee.
here's my question on this. You know, he's going to be there. If we have questions to the chief, we can ask. It's just like having the Board of Ed presenting. We can ask pretty much anybody on the Board of Ed, and they're going to speak up. I think whoever makes the presentation doesn't really matter. It's getting the information.
I think relative to the issue at hand, I don't think we need a motion to invite the chief. I'm happy to officially invite the chief, to make a presentation. I think that the chair or the representation of the chair of the committee said on this last Monday, 2 days ago, that they were not to a point of conclusion. So, I mean, they certainly can come and maybe offer information, but I think, yeah. So Carolyn, what I'm saying is I don't think we need a motion to bring the chief forward. I think one of the concerns of some of the members is, are we at a point where we can formulate a budget to move forward to a public meeting? And, relative to satisfying your issue, the only way to do that is to include the one per diem
The chief,
and see what the public has to say. And
I have no problem seconding the motion to have everyone in the committee and the ambulance come to answer questions. I don't think it holds us up from voting on the Board of Selectmen's budget if we're willing to add in an additional referendum item. And I would also say that just because we put the line item in for this year doesn't mean we're committed to it forever after. We can put it in for this year. If it gets voted forward, fine. If the committee finishes and finds there's another way to do it, come next year, we can do something different.
okay. So Ann, are you saying that you're willing to second her motion, at least to have more data?
Yes.
Okay. So is there any further discussion? We have a first and a second on that motion, which I think is to invite the chief and the committee to our next meeting to bring us up to date as to the preparedness and need for staff at the volunteer fire company.
Well, I think it's to have them come and answer questions from the public and from us. I think that was how her motion was worded.
I'm saying I would like to have the chief come and present his presentation to us at our next meeting. And he's prepared to present and answer questions. So I'm not sure why this has to be so complicated.
Okay, Mike
It's his
Anderson.
plan of action.
We have a second and we're still in discussion. Mike?
I don't know what the motion is anymore.
Yeah, the motion was
Because
to invite.
Ann seconded a motion that apparently Caroline is not moving for.
Okay, the original motion was to invite the fire chief of the North Stonington Fire Department to the next meeting so he can answer questions that we or the public may have. Paul and Dan asked to alter the motion to include the whole committee and the ambulance. And Carolyn agreed, but she wanted the chief to make the presentation. Have I got that right?
I just want to
No?
make it simple. Okay, sorry. I know this is just dragging way on. Okay, so can I withdraw my last statement and just make it simple? I make a motion to have the chief of the North Thornton Volunteer Fire Company attend our next Board of Finance meeting to make his presentation that he has ready so that he can address the need and present his plan of action to the public. That's basically it. It's just simple. I'm sorry. I know I talk a lot. It's just frustrating to me that we've come this far.
Ann, are you still a second to what she just said?
If we include the rest of the committee and the ambulance, yes. Can we do that, Carolyn?
Not saying that.
What was it? I'm sorry. So it's,
Can we invite the rest of the committee and the ambulance
you
to
can
answer
invite the
questions?
committee, but I want the chief to make the presentation. He
Right.
has the plan. He's reached out and he has a plan that he wants to present.
Point of order.
Yeah,
Good.
Mike.
Dan, I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on something. I don't want there to be any confusion. The committee's objective is to review operations of emergency services in the town of North Stonington, including ambulance and fire services. One of the objectives within the committee is certainly to look at this staffing issue, but there are a number of other issues this committee is looking at. Carolyn's request, as I understand it, is she wants the chief to present the fire company's solution for staffing. This is completely separate than what the committee is working on. The fire company feels they have a solution, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with what they're. So I just want to make sure it's very clear. What you're asking for could put us in a strange situation with a committee that we're trying to, it's a new committee that we're, certainly trying to keep motivated, excited for the work that they're doing. To have, the chief come in with that committee and make his presentation while the committee's trying to do work that's, they may very well get to the same place within, 3 or 4 months. But we really don't know right now. So I'm concerned about the, kind of concerned about the ask here. I think it's separate. If Carolyn wants the chief to come in and make the chief's presentation, that should be voted on kind of as itself. And if there's this, if you guys move through and want to do that, that's up to you. Again, the Board of Selectmen did not move that forward. And I just wanted to make sure I was clear about that.
All right, so Mike is making the point that the motion be specific to the chief talking about staffing, which I think is the point that you're trying to get to, Carolyn. And then it's whether or not Ann is willing to second that motion.
Yes,
Okay,
I have no problem listening to his presentation.
so you have a second to that motion. I think we've discussed this more than we need to in order to bring it to a vote. So let's bring it to a vote. Again, it's going to be polled yes or no. Carolyn?
Yes.
Your motion. Yeah, okay. Paul Simon,
Yes.
Ann Aiken, sure you're in
Yes.
the yes column. Yeah,
Yes.
Dan Smith,
Yes.
Mike Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, and I will vote yes as well. So it's 6-0-0. So we'll extend a formal invitation to the chief to talk specifically about staffing requirements. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So are we at a point where we can bring the general government budget to a motion for a vote? Whether it should include the one per diem or not. And in the not, have it as part of the referendum. Or await more data from this invitation we just agreed upon.
I mean, in addition to the chief coming in next week, I would like to rehash a couple of line items, Dan, on the Board of Selectmen's budget, if we can, if we're all willing to talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess I'll start from the bottom up. The C3.15 Open Space Fund, adding $9,000. Where last year it was 1,000. I know we thought that we should have 10 grand in there or some dollars in there, but I'm looking to have that removed from this year's budget unless there's a real compelling reason to have it.
Again, for those who are not familiar, that's a land acquisition line item where we accumulate assets in order to take advantage or opportunity with a land purchase that could be beneficial to the taxpayers of the town. Historically, it's always been at the $10,000 level. In recent years, it's been 1,000. And the selectmen voted to move that from a 1,000 up to 10 or a $9,000 increase.
Make a
Seriously.
motion to remove it from the budget.
Which one was it again?
C.15, I'm sorry, C3.15. Part of the last page of the budget Christine forwarded a couple weeks ago.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so are you saying to reduce it down to the 1,000 versus 10,000?
Correct.
Okay, so Dan Smith made the motion, second by Ann, for the Board of Selectmen to delete 9,000 that was added to line item C3.15 land acquisition. Any further discussion? All right, if we can poll, take it to a vote. Carolyn, yay or nay?
Yay.
Mike Anderson,
Nay.
Paul Simon,
Yay.
Ann Aiken,
Yay.
Dan Smith, you brought it, so you're in the yay
Yay.
column. Let's see, who am I missing?
Yourself.
So
Oh, myself, yeah, so, okay. I would say yes, yay. So that passes 5-1-0.
Okay, next one I had for discussion, unless someone else wants to hop in, was C3.04. Can someone describe what that $5,000 increase was again? Again, I'm sorry, Mike, for rehashing this. Mike
What's the
Ergo.
description on the line item?
It is town building maintenance. It was 20,000, went down to 15,000. We're trying to bring it back to 20 now.
Can I answer this, Mike, or do you want to answer it?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Christine.
Mike or Christine, whoever might have
You can
background on
provide
that.
clarity. I mean, for the record, I am not in favor of any further reductions. And in all my time sitting on the Board of Finance, I haven't really seen where the Board of Finance is implementing line item reductions like this to the Board of Selectmen's budget. This is the 6th time we've come forward. We did not recommend any further reductions, and I'm very, very disappointed that this course of action is happening right now. Christine, feel free.
Okay, so the line had been reduced last year when we made extensive cuts to the budget. So we brought it back up to the prior level of 20,000. We have acquired new buildings for the town. We have the Center for Emergency Services. We have the old firehouse, that's our new rec center. So that line is for any maintenance that needs to be done at any of the town-owned buildings. All of our buildings are starting to age. There's things that need to be done. So that's why that was brought back up to 20,000.
Okay, thank you. That helps me a lot. And I'm not sure if anybody else wants to share anything more with that.
I would just say that in regards to addressing line items, I know Sean Murphy could probably say that the board that I sat on did address line items with him. So to be fair, yes, we have done that before.
Okay. I missed this presentation. I know we've talked about it a couple times since then. The Wheeler Library, the $20,000 increase to bring it up to $55,000. Was that to replace windows or something? Is that true?
No, that's to bring their funding up so that they're not cutting into their endowment to fund their operations, which is what they've been doing.
I see there was no maintenance involved with that.
Well, no.
Yeah, I think it was presented to be a supplement for operations. And that part of their presentations as a comparative that we have well underfunded our library versus other towns in terms of a percentage of expenditure budgets. And I think the consensus was, at least post-presentation, that the library certainly is an asset to the town and well used by the taxpayers. And certainly, I've seen great articles and letters relative to its use and the accommodations they've made in terms of function to serve the taxpayers during this pandemic.
No, I would agree. I just, for some reason, I thought there was some replacement of some capital purchases for the building itself that I thought would be more appropriate for a request from the Board of Finance at some later date. But if it's not there, it's my mistake. That's not what it is.
Mike Anderson.
I just recall that, I mean, right now, Ann is correct in what she said. It was, these guys are running in the red and having to tap into their endowment every year. And I think some of the necessary capital improvements that they wanted to make, Paul, using, which would be used, the endowment money should be used for, they can't really do because they're using it for their yearly expenses.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I thought that an appropriation for those capital improvements would be the way to go, but if that's not this, then
Yeah, it's not.
okay. If I might continue, I have something at B21.02, an additional $5,000 for elections and town meetings. Did I hear recently that we're going to start having elections at the school? And is that the reason for this increase in funding? I guess that's Christine or Mike.
It's not the reason for the increase in funding.
Any care to elaborate a little bit, Mike?
Mike, I can answer. So the registrars always ask for far more than they are allocated, and they make do with what they have. We have had feedback from the town that people would like more items to go to referendum. More referendums mean more money that needs to be allocated for elections. So this upcoming year, there's the primary, there's the November general election, there would be the May referendum for the annual town meeting. And then if there are additional items that needed to be voted on throughout the year at a referendum rather than a town meeting, that's additional expenses that we would have for those votes.
And your thought is really this is more around it being a presidential election year, adding to the burden.
The addition of potential referendum votes for regular town matters, since people have less of an appetite to vote at a town meeting, and the presidential.
So isn't that something that you could come to for an appropriation for, should that be realized? So I guess not knowing that, I'd make a motion to cut that $5,000 increase on line 21.02.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor presented by Paul, seconded by Dan, to amend line item B 21.02 with the deletion of the $5,000 increase. Discussion. Ann?
If we leave it in there and they don't end up using it, it just comes back into the undesignated fund, correct?
That is correct.
All right,
But we'd have to tax people as if we were using it.
yeah.
And is there, there's no restriction on them moving things from line item to line item, correct? Unless it's over a certain amount?
Any transfers would be approved by Board of Finance. Mike Anderson, did you have your hand up?
I just think this is one of those items that the selectmen and their staff know more about, and they've discussed this thoroughly, and they think this money is necessary in this particular year, and we should leave it be.
All right. With that said, we'll bring it to a vote. Carolyn, yay or nay?
I'm just going on the side of caution because we don't know what to anticipate in regards to revenues. So I'm going to say yay. And then if they need the money, they can request it again.
Mike Anderson,
Nay.
Paul Simon,
Yay.
Ann Aiken,
Yay.
Dan Smith,
Yay.
and myself, I vote nay. So it passes 4-0 to decrease that line item as presented by $5,000.
I have one. B8.00, town attorney fees. The $12,000 additionally, was that for in case the town had to use him or her for the reval?
No, those are regular attorney expenses. In the past few years, we've had to do end of the year transfers into the town attorney line because we keep going over. So we kind of reallocated things. We took out of our tribal attorney line because there are less matters going on in that area, and put more into the regular town attorney line. And then we've also kind of redistributed because of the attorney line and the land use. So we can truly keep land use things in the land use attorney line and everything else in the town attorney line.
Okay, so we
And
have,
to further clarify, we were going over because we cut it pretty substantially a couple of years ago.
Correct.
So it's refreshing where it probably should be.
okay.
Yeah, I think there's sound justification for where that line item was proposed.
Okay.
Anything else, folks?
Just one, maybe a little bit more awkward conversation. B25.00 coordinator. Why was that a 17 some percent increase?
Okay, so we've talked about this
Sorry,
every time you
Christine.
guys have looked at the budget.
Appreciate
So it's not that it's an increase, it's that part of the salary, 10 hours a week for the IT coordinator has been coming out of the Center for Emergency Services operating line B2613. So we wanted it to be a true salary line coming out of where it should be so that there isn't this continual question of what his salary is and why that other line is what it is. So this is a 1 year, it looks like a big jump, but it's just that we removed it from B2613 and moved it into B25.
So 2613 and B25, if we were to look at those old numbers, that's a net zero.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that had been talked about pretty thoroughly because it did jump out as we reviewed it. Yep.
Yeah, it looks awkward because it is such a large jump, but it is just a reallocation of line.
No, that's fair. I appreciate it. A lot of numbers flying around. I'll make sure I get them straight here. And you might be angered again by this, but how about B1.04 bookkeeper? Pretty good bump there as well.
So that position was removed from the union and the title was changed to accounting generalist and duties were added to that position. So it looks like it's a bigger jump than it is. Her current salary is was part of the union negotiation. So she just has a 2% increase, but that's getting the line to where it needs to be.
So how do you calculate the 2% increase?
It was part of the union negotiations that were done going into this current year.
But the delta
So-
between last year and the proposal is significantly more than that. So walk me through that again.
So when the contract was negotiated, it was a 1.5% increase for the other people in that union for this year. And then that salary was bumped up to the new level. So that number that she has is a contract amount, so that can't be changed.
So the level change and a contract adjustment.
Yep.
Okay. That was the last one I had. Thank you for the patience.
Great.
Uh,
Anybody else at this moment? Dan, is your hand up,
Yeah.
Dan?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we've talked about it when when Mike first made his presentation about first selectman, and actually Paul and Dan and I were on the same committee about hiring Christine and having Juliet and having the two different worlds, and possibly having the first selectman go to either reduced role at that time. I know the presentation was brought and it was like a 50-50 split between the different towns had a similar structure, similar size, and it was pretty much split down the middle about having a part-time selectman versus a full-time selectman. And I was wondering if the Board of Finance wants to possibly look at facilitating a reduction there. We have two big projects in town that have kind of on the back side of it. I think if we're going to do something in that position, I think this would be a good time to have at least a discussion about it.
My own view on that, because I was on the committee, is that where we are currently and as we look to the future, we have a very robust strategic plan for the town with priorities that need a lot of discovery and oversight aside from what we've done with emergency management and education. And I think that Mike, in his capacity, has done a phenomenal job in moving the town forward with initiatives that should bear fruit, and that this is not the time to back down. A lot has already been done in order to develop some traction. And we need a first selectman who is kind of the strategic leader, not the person who is sitting in the office rolling up his sleeves and answering the phone. That's my thought.
Well, when we had that committee, we put forth the effort where we were going to have the extra position to facilitate, to allow more of, I would say, an elected figure on top to make policy, not do the day-to-day stuff. Is there truly that much out there still in the day-to-day stuff that it needs to be shared?
Well, I think, relative, I mean.
To support the salary, that $75,000 goes to Christine, money well spent. And then we have a selectman making $65,000. And then I would have to dig up Juliet's price. Just a couple of years ago, Nick Mullane was doing pretty much everything.
Yeah, what I would have to say to that only because, I mean, I have legacy relative to what's happened over the last 10 years is that we have definitely moved the town forward. And the biggest initiative that we have ahead of us is bringing infrastructure so that we can realize economic development that can enhance our grand list and thereby help the taxpayers, the residential taxpayers in the town. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done.
I think we added the capacity to, the town, but with the two positions, but I'm thinking that the head position is being a little much overpaid for just a political position at that point, especially with the selectmen being paid $2,700. So I'd like to make a motion to cut B100 by $15,000 to, we'll make it a round number, $50,000.
Was Ann's hand up for that?
No,
Not to second, no. I had
Go
a,
ahead, and
when it was presented to the town, it was presented that we would be adding Christine and Juliet and taking the first selectman position back to a part-time position. That's how it was sold to me at the town hearing. So I really think if that's what the plan was, that's what we should do. However, I'm not comfortable with cutting the salary of somebody who ran for a position with the understanding that it had a set salary. I think we should make the change, but I think we should make it when we elect our next first selectman. And if that's going to be Mike Urgo, well, then he will run for that position knowing that it's not at the salary that it is currently.
I think, Ann, you've taken the words right out of my mouth. I too am uncomfortable with someone who's signed up for a gig and now it's, and I do agree, it should be changed. The salary should be less, but not once someone's already in role. I do struggle with that some. So Dan, I don't know that 15,000 number for me is appropriate tonight.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Can I ask for a second? Hearing none, the motion is vacated.
But there should be some discussion certainly with next election cycle to do something like this, but that's not for tonight's chat.
Okay, again, staying with agenda item number 3 in budget preparation. I would make a motion that we approve the general government's budget with the amendment of the 9,000 on line 731 point, excuse me, C3.15.
I muted and said second.
Paul, you're a
What,
second.
were there other amendments or was it just one?
The only one would be, we're not considering the per diem. We're going to get more data there, whether or not that becomes an add-in. So the only thing that developed here is a $9,000 deletion.
No, we also agreed to cut the extra 5,000 out of the
Thank you for
registrar.
the correction, Ann. Yep,
That's what I thought. There was another cut.
14,000.
So at the public hearing, we're gonna have discussions about all of this, and if the people would like to bring forward the per diem, is that
Yes.
something that can be discussed to add back in if it's something that the public wants?
And that's what
Yeah.
the public meeting is all about.
Thank you.
Correct. Yep. Okay, so Paul, did you second?
I did.
Yes, okay. So just to make it clear, we're approving the general government budget with the amendment of the 9,000 in land acquisition, C3.15, and the 5,000 and C3.04. Any further discussion? Okay, let's bring it to a vote. And again, we'll do the poll. Carolyn, yay or nay?
Yay.
That was a yay, I'm sorry. Yes,
Yes.
okay. Mike Anderson,
It's to you, Mike.
Mike, are you on? Can you hear me? Mike Anderson?
He's muted.
I don't think he hears us either.
Yeah,
He's not-
you were saying something about his earphones once before.
yeah.
Mike Anderson, can you hear me?
Hold up his name.
All right, let's go to Paul.
Wait.
We'll come back to Mike. Paul,
Yes, approved.
Ann,
Yes.
Dan Smith.
No,
Okay, I vote yes. And Mike Anderson. Christine, are you seeing if he's on or not?
He seems like he signed off. I think since he was having some trouble, he's probably switching devices. So I would just give him a minute.
Okay.
Oh, he's back. He's connecting
Mike,
to
can you
audio.
hear me? Mike Anderson?
He was pointing at his ears before he blacked out, so I don't know what's going on.
He says yes.
There it is.
Thank you.
The universal affirmative sign, yes.
All right, so the motion passes 5-1-0. So usually at this point, we've approved the budget to go forward. And the formal motion is one where we're actually giving the dollar amount per section on the face page of the budget. Yeah, and I know I had sent this to all of you. So Christine Diaz, can you run that up so that we have those numbers with the amendments?
I need a minute to finish adding it in. In the motion that you did last year, you didn't have the full numbers. But I'll get it together.
Yeah, why don't we do it just for the record? Yeah.
Dan, is this
Yes,
something that you sent out that I also didn't get?
This right here.
When did you send that out?
This would have been right after our actual last meeting when we did meet. So 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, okay, that's something else I didn't get.
And it was just adding the example or illustration of the 2.5% increase on Board of Ed plus 1 per diem fire person.
Yeah,
That's
I
kinda
didn't
how
get
we
that.
went. All right. I'll do a drill down on that tomorrow with Jim, see what's going on.
All right, thank you.
Mike, are you hearing us now? Mike Anderson? I guess not. Mike, are you up? Mike Anderson? All right, so we're just waiting for Christine Diaz, for the numbers.
I just sent that to you, Ann Aiken, if you have your email open. Yes, I think I did, if you get it,
Paul, can you send it to me too, please?
certainly.
Yes, I just got it from you, Paul.
Okay,
Can you send it to me as well?
sure,
Thank you, Paul.
no problem.
Paul, you're now in charge of sending emails out to all Board of Finance members every time
Nope.
we get
Okay.
something.
I'm sure they're gonna fix it.
With love.
It's
Yeah.
right.
I
was
thought
really-
we had fixed it.
I thought so too.
Christine sent it to us, so we can give her all the credit.
I think that it got fixed right after that had gone out, and I think that's what the problem is. Because
Okay.
that was like 2 weeks ago, so.
Yes.
Okay, so I have the new numbers.
I still haven't
So-
gotten it, Paul.
Sorry, I was just looking. You should have it now.
Ah,
That's funny.
Go ahead, Christine. I'll see if you're correct versus my numbers or vice
Okay.
versa.
So for general government, 5,043,664. Redemption of debt, 1,204,204. Education, 14,119,738. And capital, 320,175, for a total of 20,687,781.
Okay, so I'm sorry, the capital amount again was 320.
Yes, 320,175.
Okay. And the general government was 5,043,664.
Yes,
And if you give me your total one more time.
20,687,781.
Okay, that's what I've got. Yeah. Very good. So the motion will be that the Board of Finance approves the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-21 as follows, just the numbers that Christine just gave us. If I can have a second to my motion.
Dan, point of order, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead.
The motion should be for the Board of Finance to send the budget to a public hearing.
He's absolutely correct. I know I said that in the beginning, but yes, that's got to be a part of, it's a submission to the Board of Selectmen to call a town hearing.
It's the Board of Finance's role to call the hearing.
Yeah, you've got the town meeting, we've got the hearing, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Second as amended?
Yeah, because the numbers were just presented correctly by Christine.
Yeah.
Are you a second on my motion, Paul?
I am.
Okay. All in favor, again, we'll poll Caroline,
Yes,
Mike Anderson,
Yes.
Paul Simon, you're a yes. Ann Aiken,
Yes,
Dan Smith,
Yes.
and Dan Spring, yes, 600. Thank you very much, everybody.
Dan,
Okay.
do you need to set the date for the hearing as part of that motion?
Probably, again, it's a matter of, okay, where are we? What can we do it? I mean,
You
how do
should
we do it?
the date, and you should set it for a virtual hearing. And as far as when you can set it, we just need advertising, which I'm sure Christine has the.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks at least. Yeah,
Yep.
I would say the earliest would be June 1st if you want to do it on a Monday.
I have no problem with that. So again, for Board of Finance members, we're talking about a public hearing that will be presented by the Board of Finance to those in attendance. Okay.
so when is it? June 1st, you said? Or
1st.
it seems a
Which
little
will be a
early.
Monday, and it's usually, they're usually at 6 PM, Christine?
I think we've done 6 and we've done 7. The last year it was at 6, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you, Christine. Moving on, I did send you profit losses for Board of Selectmen General Government. I sent you the tax report, which I did not put on the agenda. The Board of Ed, which I thought I would have done, had not as yet been approved by the Board of Ed. This would be through April. So, and they don't meet until next week. So as soon as I have that in hand, I will forward it to you. I did put project updates only because we haven't talked about them in a while, and we're at 9:55. This shouldn't take long, but if Mike Urgo is still on, just a quick update on projects that are going on in town.
Yes, so I think you guys, most of you were on the call last week with the Board of Selectmen. So the school modernization is wrapping up, going well. Very pleased with the progress and with all the obstacles. Really happy how things are wrapping up there. Boombridge Road Bridge is underway, and again anticipated for completion the end of November, if not sooner. The Board of Selectmen have discussed the opportunity for the Winterchog Hill property that was voted down for affordable housing to be looked at as a potential site for an animal shelter. There's been discussion of a 501c3 outside of the town being formed to help fund that. So we are looking at that property now, doing some work over there, just kind of clearing it a little bit, just to take a look at the property, understand the elevations, see if it's possible to do something there or not. So just really in the investigation phase right there. Continued work. Obviously, the highway crew has been very busy, continuing with road repairs around town, tree trimming, and lots of things like that happening. And if there's any other projects that I can answer questions for, certainly let me know.
The outbuilding at the firehouse, I know that's been completed. Where does that put us in terms of the closeout of that project in total?
The only thing that was last to be completed was just some swale runoff work that had to be done behind the building, which was part of the project in and of itself. But we're basically done. I don't know if that had been completed yet or not. Christine, I don't know if there's any update on that, but that project's basically done and finished, and there's no more work to be done over there. Is there anything else on that, Christine?
No, nothing at this time.
All right, for the benefit of the Board of Finance, where did that come in relative to budget?
I don't have the exact numbers, but we definitely came in under. I mean, we spent under what was allocated. That whole project was designated $6.36 million, and I want to say we came in, 5,000 or 6,000 at least under that. I'm just estimating. I don't have the exacts in front of me.
Okay. It would be nice just to have a view of the closeout on that particular project. I know it's been ongoing for a while.
We can provide that.
Yeah, some points to finish up, to include the outbuilding and so forth. Ann Aiken, yes.
Mike, I noticed that the road crews have been doing a lot of tree trimming, and I mean a lot. Is there a lot of overtime because of this, or is that just are they just focusing on that right now?
Well, we've been incredibly fortunate, and I must give kudos to the highway crew for the work they've done. If the last windstorm we had very few power outages, and that is not normal for North Stonington. I'm very, very happy with the work they're doing. But actually, we've been very fortunate because we are getting free labor from both Eversource and the state doing a lot of tree trimming downtown. So it's, yes, the crew is also doing some tree trimming, but we're actually, when the crews have time and they're calling us at times, hey, do you have some trees? So we've actually marked some more trees. We have an incredible amount of dead trees. Obviously, North Stonington's a huge town geographically, so we have tons of trees that can come down. So we're marking trees and taking advantage of that free labor when we can. So no, it's not an overtime thing.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will make a point there that a lot of those trees are girths of 3 and 4 feet, which I think in times past they would say, this is daunting. We're not going to handle that. But I think the crew has handled that in terms of kind of a risk-oriented mission, really very well, and we applaud their effort for sure.
Thank you for noticing, and I actually just gave kudos to Joe Rubino, our new, our not new, but our highway. I mean our tree. Why is that?
Warden? Tree warden.
Yes, tree warden. Thank you. The other day in our staff meeting. So yeah, they've been doing a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really been noticeable around me.
Right. I think a lot of us have handled a chainsaw, but tackling a tree that's 4 feet in girth is just like, I don't know. Yeah, good job. Good job.
Child's play.
Okay, so we're on to agenda item number 6, future strategies. We talked about public hearing. I have on there auditing services appointment. So each year we have to send into the state our appointment for auditing services. And this is an area we haven't been putting focus on, but there's something that has to be submitted by the end of the fiscal year. And, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic and whatever, I would like to put forward a motion that we continue with our auditing services of Sandra Wellwood LLC for the fiscal year 2020-21.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion there? All right. What I can tell you, only because I've looked at this before to include her services, and we are definitely not overpaying. We are below market with this auditing service. So in the next year, it might be worth just seeing what the market bears and put out an RFP and see what comes back. So, so we have the motion and the second by Mike Anderson, and this is to continue our auditing services into the year 2020-21, utilizing Sandra Wellwood LLC. And again, she is our current auditing service entity. So
I'll just make a comment, Dan.
yeah, go ahead.
You know, sometimes people are leery to keep using the same auditor, but oftentimes, I mean, I'm on a board for a nonprofit, and we've used the same auditor for many years. I mean, the whole time that I've been on the board, and it's come up from discussion of whether or not you need to get fresh blood in there. But usually there are 2 or 3 members from the company that look at the books to make sure that the first person has done their due diligence and are checking that person's work. So it's not just one person working on it, and and they have experience with our town. They understand our books. They understand the ins and outs. So I think it's beneficial to go forward, particularly at this time, with the same crew. But I just wanted to put it out there that there's not a lot of danger of them missing something, because there's a lot of oversight even within the company.
Yeah, when Mike is saying it's prudent for us to, look at the market and see what it bears. Are we paying too much, too little, for what we get? And that over time, as he's suggesting, sometimes there's familiarities that gets built in, and things aren't done the way they should. What I would tell you, only because I always have close dialogue with Deb Morton, business manager of Board of Ed, and Christine, of course, and Susan in the town hall. This auditing service is a great resource. They've got things clicking like a well-oiled machine. And that in these audits, I always request an independent assessment letter to be part of their brief back to us. So, Dan Smith, did you have something? Go ahead.
Yeah. How many years in between when we have to re-up with them do we look at the pricing and or to other firms? Is it every 3 years? Is it every 2 years? Is it every year?
No.
What's your normal standard?
Yeah, and Mike, he could weigh in, but as you have somebody in tenure from 7 to 10 years, it's probably worth looking outside and getting another proposal in. I think to do it every year or 2 years, you're really not serving yourself, because the familiarity of that auditing service is making ongoing changes potentially that really add to the efficiency during their contracted time. in saying contracted, we can always ask for any of these auditing services to give us pricing with a 5-year contract. But in
Okay.
this case, I will negotiate that we pay no more than what we did in this current year. So that's how I'll put it forward. Any other discussion there? All right, if we can bring it to a vote, I guess, again, we're polling yay or nay. Carolyn,
Yay.
Paul Simon,
Yay.
Mike Anderson,
Yay.
Ann Aiken,
Yay.
Dan Smith,
Yay.
and myself, yay. So it's 6-0-0. And back to Christine Diaz. I have the form, Christine Diaz, so I'll get that back to you.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Previous minutes. We're 9:07.
Dan, Mike Ergo has his hand up about
Oh, I'm
something.
sorry,
I don't know if
Mike.
it's
I
with
was
the last
looking down.
item.
Sorry, Dan, I just didn't, I just to be safe, I just wanted to ask that the board make a motion, consider a motion for the date and time of the hearing. That wasn't included in your motion when you called the hearing, and generally, it is generally included. It would be a virtual hearing, but just because we do have to advertise this in the paper, so I just want to make sure we kind of cover all our bases.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry for that. I know I was noting it. I didn't know if you did, Ann, June 1st, Monday, June 1st at 6 p.m.
I did not make it part of the motion because we didn't discuss it.
You can make a separate motion if you want. I know you, that's why I'm mentioning it. I know it wasn't part of
Okay.
the motion.
Okay.
All right, so I would present the motion that the call for the public hearing for the presentation of the North Stonington budget fiscal year 2020-21 be held Monday, June 1st at 6 p.m. Via teleconferencing.
Second.
Can I
Video
just,
video conferencing.
Of video conferencing.
can I ask a question? Is there discussion?
Sure, discussion now, yeah.
So I'm concerned about the voters being able to actually vote. So I'm just wondering, like, the chain of events that are going to take place and how, I mean, I want to make sure that the voters can actually vote on this budget, that, you know, the town, we're not making the decision for the people, that they have a voice in their vote.
I think we all have that concern. I think relative to the motion, we're just setting the date for the public meeting. So if we could just stay to that, and then we'll see if we can answer that. Carolyn?
Public hearing, just point of order. Public hearing,
Public hearing.
not public meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, public hearing. Mhm. Okay, again, we'll poll. Carolyn, yay or nay?
As long as, so it's, I just want to understand, it's coming back to the Board of Finance, and then we will have, there'll be a meeting and then a vote. It's,
Yes.
okay, all right, yes.
Paul Simon,
Yay.
Mike Anderson,
Yay.
Ann Aiken,
Yay. Did you give me a time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Dan Smith,
Yay.
and I'm yay. So it's 6-0-0. Again, relative to the public hearing. All right, previous minutes. Ann Aiken was kind enough to send them all out. I think we're looking at a group of 3, Ann.
Yes.
So it would be February 12th, April
Correct.
22nd, and April 29th.
When were those sent out, Dan, just so I can see if I have them?
Yeah.
Before our last meeting,
Have to get the,
Would that be the 5th?
it was the 4th or the 5th, yes.
I've got the 5th.
Okay,
All right, so I did a review on February 12th. I didn't have any changes. I don't know if anybody else saw something. On April 22nd, I had one amendment, Ann,
okay,
and it's at the paragraph that you're talking about the budget increases with projected mill rates.
yes,
And you said that it did not include the 225,000 revenue shortfall, something to that effect.
right, yes,
Okay. Those numbers actually included the shortfall. That was just the reverse. That's when we were looking at mill rates of potentially 1.1, 1.2, whatever it was.
right,
Because if it were not in there, the mill rate, the projected mill rate would be less.
all right, so my notes said that we were looking at a 1.1 mil increase for the 2.1% Board of Ed budget increase. And with a 2.85% increase, we were looking at a 1.25 mil rate increase.
Yeah, but it increased, but it
Includes.
also included the 225,000 revenue shortfall, which we then voted to take from unassigned. And I think that the next sentence started with neither included.
Right,
Okay.
So it should say,
But in fact, it included the revenue shortfall on those numbers.
okay, okay,
And that's the only thing I had there.
okay,
And then in April 29th, the only thing I found there was, if you recall, Paul Simon had a motion that was vacated,
yes,
but what we should say that there was no second.
it does say that.
Oh, maybe I.
Yeah, the first one was vacated. The second one was the same 2.1% increase. The second
Didn't
one
pass.
it didn't pass. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, as long as the one that was vacated, shows that there was no second.
yes, it does.
it
Okay.
does, it says no second.
All right, so I would make a motion to approve the group of minutes, February 12th, 2020, April 22nd, 2020, April 29th, 2020 of the Board of Finance as amended.
Second.
Okay, Paul has a second to me. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All right. And Again, 212, 422, and 429. Thank you. Okay, finally, here we are at 9:15 and agenda item 8, public comments. So Christine, if you can help us out, we'll see if there's some public comments.
Okay, again, so if you are on your phone, you hit *6 to unmute yourself. And if you're on another device, just hit unmute and make sure you say something so we know you've unmuted yourself.
Hi,
Brian,
yep. I've been listening and I'd like to know, it sounds like you're proposing, Board of Finances are proposing a budget. So what would the mill increase be?
I'm not clear of the question, Brian or Christine, if you heard it better, what was it?
The mill increase?
We don't propose a mill increase at this point, Brian, only because the budget still is open to amendment based on feedback at the public hearing.
Okay, but one more question.
Yeah.
225,000 going to the school? Is that just to the school and not to the general budget?
The 225,000 that we're talking about is going to be pulled from the unassigned, our rainy day fund, to cover the shortfall in revenue expectation that we have for this coming fiscal year.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to the school? Because I know, I understand we got 3 million, 15% of my taxes went into that. So I was charged 15% of my taxes for years.
Yeah, it's not going to the school. It's just coming in as a revenue to the total expenditure budget for the next fiscal year.
Okay, well, thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Sean Murphy.
Yeah, Sean, go ahead, please.
Can you tell me what the total was that was approved tonight to go to the hearing?
The total dollar amount for the budget, you mean?
Yeah.
It was brought forward with the amendments at 20,687,781.
So that includes general government, debt reduction, education, and capital?
It does.
Okay. And to on A1.00, general property taxes current, can you tell me what mill rate was used to determine the amount of revenue indicated in line A1?
It should have been the current mill rate of 29.
So you're putting forward a budget that doesn't balance?
I have, and what are you saying? What is the difference that you're seeing, Sean?
Well, if you have 29 mil in there as that you use to calculate your revenue in line A1, then your budget doesn't balance. You put forward a budget that doesn't balance.
Well,
the hearing.
You're probably not including what we're pulling from unassigned. Based on what you're saying, you're not.
Well, so if you have a balanced budget, that means, and you're telling me 29 was used, there's no way that balances.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you know, you're looking at that just as tax revenue. You know, there's other.
Well, that's the line that I'm I'm asking about. That number is calculated using, among other items, it's a mill rate. And in order to put forward a balanced budget, that mill rate has to be greater than 29. And I was wondering what it is.
Christine,
So Sean, as with the budget that was presented last year, it is not presented as a balanced budget at the hearing. It's presented showing what the current mill rate is so that people have an understanding of what the mill rate is right now, and it does not project what the anticipated mill rate is.
How can we vote?
This is the same thing that we did last year. I'm pretty sure it was the same thing the year before. I'm looking at last year's budget, so I know it was that was what was presented for the hearing last year.
yeah, and again, we're not setting the mill rate in this meeting.
But when you present a budget to the public, it should be balanced. That's all.
Well, it will be balanced relative to the projected mill rate.
That's what we want to know.
Right.
This is the same question you refused to answer at last year's hearing.
Sean, please,
Can-
we would be roughly looking at something just under a 0.8 mil increase. You know as well as I, the mill rate isn't set based on what we've done tonight. It's not.
And I didn't ask you that.
No, you asked me why isn't it balanced? And the only way it's going to be balanced is if you have a set mill rate.
A proposed mill rate.
Thank you. Correct. We're still open for public comments. All right, hearing no other, I would move for adjournment. Do I have a second?
You do.
Mike Anderson, I saw your hand first.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 I think that's going to be 600 and the time 9:23. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, folks.
And we'll be
Hi,
talking
Mary Ellen.
next week.
I just love it.
Good night.
Oh, wait.
Where's John? Where's John boy? Come on.
He left already.
So good night to all the dogs.
Bye, guys.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Bye.